Have you ever heard the claim that people used to live for almost 1,000 years? It sounds absolutely wild, right? Well, today, that's exactly what we're diving into, one of the most mind-bending ideas you'll find in ancient scripture. So, let's just get right to it. Could a person really live for over 900 years? I mean, it flies in the face of everything we think we know about biology, about life itself. It's a huge question, so let's see what the source material actually has to say about it. And the numbers, they're just wow. We're not talking about one person hitting a lucky streak. According to these texts, the average lifespan of the first 9 patriarchs was 912 years. 912. That's not an outlier. That's the norm for them. So yeah, this is the claim we really need to dig into. All right, so how are we going to tackle this? Here's the plan. First, we'll hit the biggest question right off the bat, the whole question of time. Then we'll check out a really interesting generational overlap, get a witness from an ancient historian, and then try to wrap our heads around what life was actually like before the flood. Okay, first things first. This is probably what you're thinking, right? It's the most logical place to start. When they say a year, did they actually mean a year like we do? Or were their years maybe just shorter? Maybe they were counting months or something. And really, this whole thing boils down to two opposing ideas. You've got the skeptic's view, which is pretty straightforward. Hey, they just meant something different by the word year. But then the source material comes right back and says, nope, a year is a year. It's always been this 4-season cycle, and that's that. So how does the source even try to back this up? It's pretty interesting, actually. It lays out a few key points. First, it says the patriarchs had this deep, almost divine knowledge of astronomy. They could actually calculate the cycles of the Earth, Moon, and Sun. And think about it, if you're keeping these super detailed genealogies, you'd need a really accurate calendar, right? It also points out that Genesis itself mentions years having months, which sounds pretty familiar. And the final piece of the puzzle for the source is that its whole 7,000-year historical timeline, well, it only works if you take these crazy long lifespans literally. Okay, so moving on from the calendar debate, the source brings up something, well, it's a really compelling piece of evidence. It talks about a specific time in history where you could see these super long lifespans and our shorter ones existing side by side. A living comparison, you could say. So here's the setup. It's like a natural experiment. You have Noah and his sons, who came from the before times with those long lives. But after the flood, they're living at the same time as their own kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, and all of their descendants are living much, much shorter lives. Everyone's in the same world at the same time, but with wildly different lifespans. And this is where it gets crazy to visualize. Look at this. You can see Noah's life, just this one long line stretching across the whole thing. He literally outlives 9 generations of his own family. You can see their lives getting shorter and shorter while Noah's just keeps going. It's incredible. And here's the kicker. The argument is, if you were a historian back then, writing all this down, you'd be using the same calendar for everybody, right? You wouldn't say, okay, a year for Noah is this long, but a year for his great-great-grandson is this long. That makes no sense. So the source argues this proves the change wasn't how they counted years, it was how long people were actually living. Okay, so that's the internal logic. But the source we're looking at doesn't stop there. It actually pulls in a witness from outside the text, a pretty famous historian from the ancient world. And that historian is Josephus, writing in the 1st century. And what's wild is that he knew people back then would find this hard to believe. He basically says, hey, listen up. Don't look at how short our lives are now and use that as an excuse to say this didn't happen. And Josephus even offered up a few theories as to why. He said, for one, these people were beloved by God. 2, their food was just better, fitter for a long life. And 3, God gave them all that extra time so they could figure out big things like astronomy and geometry. It's just a really cool glimpse into how someone from that era tried to make sense of it all. All right, so we've heard these huge numbers, 900 years, 950 years, but it's almost impossible to actually wrap your head around what that feels like. So for this last part, let's try to put this into a scale that makes a little more sense to us. So let's just grab one example from the source, a patriarch named Enos. Get this. His missionary work, just his job, lasted for 750 years. I'm not talking about his whole life, just his career. Okay, to really feel that, just imagine this for a second. Let's say Enos started his work way back in 1215, the same year the Magna Carta was signed in England.
If he worked for 750 years, he'd be finishing his mission right now, today. Can you imagine? One career that spans the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the discovery of America, the Industrial Revolution, all the way to the age of the Internet. That is the kind of time we are talking about.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question, one the source itself poses. If something as fundamental as the human lifespan could have been so completely different back then, what else are we getting wrong? What other things that we just take for granted about the ancient world might be completely off base?